Hey everybody, my name is Dr. Scott Giacomucci. I'm a trauma therapist and educator and a certified EMDR consultant. In this video, I want to highlight the differences between EMDR, basic protocol, and EMD. So this video is really designed for EMDR therapists who are curious about the differences between the two protocols and integrating EMDR into their work with clients. So I'm not going to cover the entire EMDR protocol. My assumption is that if you're interested in this video, you already understand the EMDR basic protocol. Though if you're curious about that, there are other videos on my channel that cover the EMDR basic protocol. So basically, the difference between EMDR and EMD is the R. In EMDR, we do reprocessing. In EMD, we focus on desensitization without the reprocessing. Historically, Francine Shapiro, who created EMDR, her original protocol was actually what we now call EMD. And over the years, EMDR evolved and developed into what it is today, into a much more comprehensive treatment protocol than the original protocol, which was basically what we call EMD today. So the difference between the two is very simple. Basically, it has to do with how frequently we're returning to the target memory during the sets. So in EMDR and in EMD, we're going to start the same way. We're going to use that EMDR worksheet and assess, what's the image and presenting issue? What's the part that represents the worst of this? What's the negative belief? What positive belief do we want to believe? We're going to get a VOC rating. We're going to check in about emotions. We're going to get a SUDS score. And we're going to ask about physical sensations. So that same setup, phase 3, is the same. We're assessing the target memory. So the difference comes in the desensitization protocol. In EMDR, we're instructed to use eye movements or bilateral stimulation of whatever kind. Have the client focus on the image, the negative belief, notice what you experience. Then we ask the client, what did you notice? And in EMDR, whatever the client says, we say, go with that and follow my fingers. In EMD, we don't do that. In EMD, we say, what did you notice? Great. Come on back to the image we started with. And so we're returning back to the target after every set. Unless there's something positive that the client notices, then we'll do another set to strengthen that. Whereas in EMDR, what did you notice? Go with that. Okay, what did you notice that time? All right, go with that. What did you notice that time? All right, go with that. And we just keep moving down the memory channel. So EMD, we don't want those associations. Instead, we're trying to contain the process focused on a specific symptom or a specific memory. We don't want it to associate out to other memories. So we're bringing it back to the target every single time. What did you notice that time? All right, let's come on back to where we started and see where things are at. When you think about the image we started with and the negative belief right now on a scale of 0 to 10, how disturbing is it now? Okay, what's the worst part of it now? Okay, focus on that. Bilateral stimulation, what did you notice that time? All right, come on back to where we started again. And we just keep bringing it back to the target, back to the target, back to the target. So that's the fundamental difference between EMD and EMDR, is the frequency that we're coming back to the target. So you might ask, well, why change and do EMD instead of EMDR? And there's some situations that you might be in with clients where it might be fitting to do so. Ideally, we would just do EMDR, but not every client is ready to do EMDR, and not every case, every situation warrants the EMDR protocol. So if you're working with a client who you're on the fence about your assessment in terms of their readiness for EMDR, maybe you're unsure about their emotional stability, you're unsure about their suicidality, you're unsure about their ability to tolerate strong emotions. You're unsure about repressed memories related to the incident you're working on. Or maybe the client is ambivalent about EMDR. Or maybe the client says, I don't want to work on those old memories. I want to work on this recent thing that happened. Or maybe the client is experiencing something particularly distressful right now that you want to desensitize without opening up the rest of the memory network. These would all be good reasons to use EMD instead of using the full EMDR protocol. Now, in between EMD and EMDR is another protocol that we call EMD lowercase r, which is just a hybrid of the two. It's a balance between returning to target every single set like we do in EMD and continuing to associate out more and more and more with EMDR, capital R. So in EMD lowercase r, we're allowing the associations once or twice, but we're bringing it back to the target much more frequently than we would with EMDR basic protocol. So if EMD feels too contained for the client or the situation, then you might shift into EMD lowercase r, where you're still keeping it more contained than you would with EMDR, but not as rigid and not as contained as EMD, just desensitization. So that's the fundamental difference between EMD and EMDR. Now with EMD, we might get the SUD score to drop to 0, the disturbance, but oftentimes we're not going to get to a 0, especially if the memory that we're desensitizing is something more recent and has a larger memory network with touchstone memories that we have not desensitized yet. In which case, I think if we get it down to like a 3 or a 2 or a 1, we've really done a good job. When memories won't go to a 0, that's a pretty good indicator that there's an earlier memory that's feeding the disturbance and activation of that memory. So in an EMD session, once we desensitize the memory as far as we can, then we move into the next phase, which is about installing the positive cognition, after which we do the body scan and then closure, just like we would with a typical EMDR session. So again, EMD, primary difference from EMDR is the frequency that we bring the client back to the target memory, and could be really useful if you're trying to work on a specific flashback or a specific nightmare or a recent event, something more recent that you haven't reprocessed the whole memory network on, or maybe you don't have a solid therapeutic relationship with the client, or you're worried about past repressed memories, or you're unsure about the client's level of emotional stability, and you're worried that full EMDR protocol has more risk for harm than you're willing to take, then EMD would be a good option. It's also useful for introducing a client to the process in a contained way so that they can become familiar with it and feel like both of you can feel like you had a relatively successful session under your belt, so that when you go and do the full EMDR protocol, there's already some momentum and a feeling of trust in the process. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, I encourage you to leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, let us know what you found helpful, and stay posted for future videos on EMDR and trauma.